Hey everyone, welcome back to the garage. In this video, we're going to be doing some cosmetic repairs on my BMW 325i E30. We've finally reached the point where we can start making this car look good from the outside. The focus of today's video is to repaint all the areas I had to re-weld on the car. Now, before we start digging into this project, let's take a look at the areas we need to repair. The first spot is right here at the driver's side rear door in that rocker panel area going into the wheel arch. This will probably be the hardest one of all three areas to do just because there's lots of curves to deal with, various body lines to compensate for. Next is back here where the battery compartment is in the rear valence. This one won't be too difficult, but there is a divot that we'll have to fill in so that it's nice and straight across. To do this one, we'll probably have to remove the rear bumper. That way we don't get overspray on things we don't want to have painted. Lastly is the right rear rocker area. This one will probably be the easiest of all three just because it's a simple flat surface that needs to be painted. Now let's take a look at the materials we'll need to do these repairs. Okay, so over here on the bench are all the materials that I expect to have to use in order to do all of these paint repairs on this car. So we'll just go down the list here. The first thing we have here is a mixing board for our fiberglass short strand body filler. This is the first thing we'll do on the car. We'll go through and apply this fiberglass filler and then we'll sand it down. We've also got an applicator here that helps us apply it smoothly onto the body. Right here we have various grits of sandpaper. I think I've got from 600 grit down to 200 grit. It's basically as fine as you need to go to do the sort of repairs we're going to do. I've also got a sanding block here. This is really helpful when you're dealing with straight sections of the body. That way they kind of stay smooth. Now this is a somewhat small sanding block, but it should be okay for the areas we are repairing. All right, starting with the aerosols that we have. The first thing we have here is a chip guard texture type spray, and I've not actually ever used this before. I hope it works well, but if you've ever noticed near the bottom of every BMW and a lot of other cars from the late 80s and 90s period, they have this rippled texture near the bottom, and it's there to be sort of a guard against road debris and all that. We'll need to lay this down before we even start painting everything. We'll do this after the body filler is sanded smooth and we have a nice body line going. We'll apply this and then the paint will go over the top of that, and hopefully we can replicate that textured appearance. Next we have our 3-part painting set. So I ordered this online from the company Scratch Wizard. I've used them in the past on my 300ZX twin turbo and it's worked really well. I've been really happy with their products. It's given me a nice finish. So you just plug in your vehicle's specs, the body color, and then they just give you a complete kit for doing body repairs. So it's the primer, the color base coat, and then a clear coat. It also comes with grease and wax remover, a tack cloth. It comes with these sandpaper grits, and it also comes with this scuff pad. Now over here we have grease and wax remover. This is what you do before you start painting. You wipe the panel down so that you don't have any grease on there so that the paint can adhere properly. And then lastly, we have a lot of masking tape. Now also, not on the bench, is a ton of paper to do the masking with. We want to reduce as much overspray as possible, so we want to mask off as much of the bodywork as possible so that we don't get overspray that we have to clean up later. Okay, with the materials reviewed, now let's dig into doing this project. First thing we need to do is start prepping the body. That means wiping down the panels we'll be dealing with the wax and grease remover, then applying the body filler. Let's get to it. Alright, so I've got all the spots prepped. Let's take a look. Starting off on the left rear, you can see that I've got it all sanded in and filled in all the big bumps. Now, the transition down here on the lower rocker panel from the chip guard to where I've sanded it isn't the smoothest, and that's because it won't really be seen at all. We're gonna mask it off here and then we're gonna spray that chip guard, and it's pretty much gonna disguise any sort of raw transition that's going on there. Now, I did spend more time up here because this is gonna be straight up paint, so I've got pretty good blends going on in here so that it won't be too noticeable that any sort of filler has been put in. Let's go take a look at the other areas. All right, back here in the lower valence, this has all been filled in. It's pretty smooth now. Again, since this is completely chip guard coated right here, I'm not spending too much time in trying to make it look perfect because I don't think you're gonna be able to notice once that chip guard's on there. So, looks pretty good. It's been flattened out quite a bit. And then over here, the lower rocker panel on the right side, again, it's completely chip guard coated, so I didn't work too hard on making the transition super smooth. You'll notice there's still a couple little divots here and there. I did get the Dremel here and replicate that seam line, and I think it'll look good once we get that chip guard going. All right, so now we gotta mask this stuff off and then start painting. Let's get to it. Applying the chip coat. I didn't get the application too good on video, so let's take a look at the finished product here. All right, you can see that it applied in sort of a white opaque color. Again, this is all gonna be covered by paint anyways. It's more of the texture that we're looking for here, and it's pretty good. You know, it matches pretty well the original BMW coating. It's real hard to apply it so that it stays consistent all throughout, but I think once the paint's on there, it will be pretty similar to what BMW would have had. Let's go take a look at the other two places. So back here in the rear valence, you know, you can kind of see some undulations going on from just a little bit lack of precision sanding that I did, but once the paint's on there, I don't think it'll be very noticeable, especially once the bumper's back on there. You know, your eyes, I don't think, will be drawn to it very much. The key to all of this is that there's real metal behind there, so there's really nothing to be worried about. Now let's move on to the rocker panel. Down here, again, it's pretty close, you know, not perfect, but that seam line looks pretty good now. All right, let's get things masked off and start applying paint. All right, so the clear coat has dried, and that means the last step of this painting procedure is complete. Let's take a look at the results. All right, starting off back here, you can see that the blend went pretty well. You can see that chip coat is looking pretty decent. Almost like factory, close enough anyway. It's down at the bottom of the car, so I mean, it doesn't really draw your eye to it, and that was really the ultimate goal behind all this. Was not really absolute perfection, but just something that no longer had your eye drawn to anymore. Unfortunately, up here, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, there's a tiny bit of running in the clear coat. I think I can wet sand that out of there and make it blend a lot better. But overall, looks pretty good. And then I went ahead and sprayed the inside of the fender here with some black paint just because there was some leftover primer and seam sealer going on in there, so now it is at least a black color. Okay, let's go look at the rear valance. Okay, so down here, looks pretty good. You know, again, your eye's not gonna be drawn to this area. Goes around the corner here and blends into the side, so not too bad. And then down here in the rocker panel, the final area, pretty good. Again, another area that originally your eye would be drawn to it, and now it just doesn't really stand out at all. So I'd have to say, I think everything turned out pretty well. It is still an amateur grade paint repair, but the key to all this is that your eye's no longer drawn to those spots anymore. I think for a day's worth of work and about $150 in materials, it's a pretty decent result. So now it's time to do what I've been waiting to do since I started working on this car almost 5 months ago. And that is to put the wheels and tires back on it and get it off jack stands. Let's get to it. So there it is, it's on the ground for the first time in about 5 months. I actually forgot how to take it off the jack stands. This car sits so low to the ground that I had a little issue with the front end, but put the wheels on some boards and I was able to get the jack back out. Now, I know if you guys are like me, you want to get out there and try and drive this thing, see how it runs. But unfortunately, it's so dirty from all the dust from welding and sanding and painting that I can't even see out the windows. So the first thing we're gonna do is give this thing a good bath. Now, I'm not gonna run it to the car wash. I am just gonna hand wash it here in the driveway because we do have fresh paint going on here and I don't want to ruin it. So let's get to it. So now that I can see out the windows and the paint's not looking so shabby after all, it's time to take this thing for a test drive. Immediately, there's no nasty door clicking when you open the driver's door. Putting the key in, you see all our dash lights come on. Works. Even the miles per gallon gauge works. The speedometer should work. The only thing that won't work yet is the odometer and trip meter because those gears are completely disintegrated, but we'll get those put in a later video. Buckle up for safety. So far so good. All the lights look like they're working as expected. Even our little onboard computer is working. Motor's working a treat, no noises, even on the highest setting. That's good. Radio. Sweet. I'll turn that off right now. Emergency brake is currently holding us stationary. Job well done there. All our window switches work, even that back one that I replaced. See, that's working now pretty nicely. I'll put the windows down. We've actually got a rare, nice fall day. It's about 60 degrees, so I'm gonna roll these windows down. Okay, so let's set off. You'll immediately see So far, the only thing bringing this car down is the interior. That's right. The seats have these nasty seat covers on them, and in fact, I've even removed the rear seat covers just because they didn't fit right with them on, but you can tell they look really tarnished. I mean, the leather's all cracked and pretty much disintegrated. All right, so you can see the speedometer is working. Shifter feels really nice. I put that shifter bushing kit in there, and it just, I mean, I can't imagine it needing to feel any better than it does right now. I mean, it's very precise feeling. Pedals feel good. The throttle response is really awesome. The brakes are, I mean, yeah, you can tell those steel braided brake lines that I put in really have made a difference. That pedal is very firm feeling. The clutch has a really good engagement point. It's a very soft pedal, but obviously grabs just fine. I'm just kind of cruising down the street here. This is not a very smooth street at all. And for a car that has easily upwards of 250,000 miles on it, it's actually quite quiet. It's not very rattly at all. I'm actually very impressed with this car. Just an old BMW, but you know what? Feels very poised and quiet. Now the suspension is pretty worn out on this car still. I mean the shocks, and I don't really know how many miles are on the springs. Obviously they're aftermarket lowered springs. But overall, ride quality is pretty good. Let's kind of get an idea of what sort of acceleration we're on here. No trouble getting up and going. It's quite a peppy little car. Fourth gear up the hill, going about 50 miles an hour. Got plenty of power to even accelerate at this speed. It's just a really fun car. It's got lots of pickup. You can just tell it's a very lightweight car. However, even from this short drive, I can already tell that the rear end is kind of loose. Yeah, the rear end's definitely kind of loose, and that's because of the rear subframe bushings, no doubt. I'll definitely get those ordered and replaced at a later time, but aside from that, it actually runs really well, steers really well, and obviously the steering input is very precise. That's what these cars are really known for. The horn works, that's good. Again, really the only thing letting this interior down are the seats, front and rear. I've actually put in a cheap $11 steering wheel cover on the steering wheel because it was just hideous. Eventually I'll get that recovered, but for right now the cover will do all right. It doesn't look too bad. See the engine's idling about 600 RPM, so that's as expected. Pretty cool Mazda pickup that's in great shape right there. Look at that. Sweet, let's go. That inline six just sounds so beautiful. I'm pretty happy about this. So I can't believe I'm saying this, but we made it. The car now runs really pretty well and it looks pretty darn good. It's nowhere near finished, but it is certainly now drivable and usable. And that's really what I was going for. Now I still plan to do a lot of work on this car, including redoing the interior, and then obviously change out the rear subframe bushings, as well as a few other little things. But I'm not quite sure when I'll get around to all that, as I've kind of dried up the piggy bank as it is. I'm just really happy to have made it this far. Many videos ago I was questioning whether I should keep this car or not, when that rust reared its ugly head. But after all this work, I'm glad I followed through and finished it. So I want to thank you guys so much for encouragement and the positive comments you left along the way. Now this certainly isn't the last video on the E30, but it might be the last one for a little bit, because I've got a few other projects I must attend to. This car has eaten nearly every single weekend I've had for the past 5 months. So I think it's time to give it a little bit of a break and actually drive it. So again, thanks so much for watching, staying with me on this project, and we'll see you guys again soon.